That's the good stuff right here. Hard, soft literature. Yeah. I mean, sort of, kind of. I tell you what, I'll check it out. You know, I'm not normally one to destroy books, but I'm just kind of big for it. Hiya folks, Fruit and Doggy here to do another book discussion, and this time I'm here to discuss Undead and Unwelcome by Mary Janice Davidson. I guess this is the 8th book out of a series. The reason I got it, and then even this one, Undead and Unfinished, was again because I thought somebody else might appreciate them, but I always like to take a look and give it a shot myself. And they were both very cheap when I found them, and they were hardback, so I was like, hey, I can't really go too wrong. Or so I thought. When I made the attempt to read the Undead and Unwelcome book, I found out perhaps maybe why it was so cheap. But anyways, like always, I'm going to do read out the summary of the book. 50,000 angry werewolves. That's what Betsy is facing when she takes her werewolf friend Antonia's body to Cape Cod, where the pack resides at Windham Manor. Because Antonia died in her service, Betsy is alive and well, and racked with guilt. She has no idea if the Windham werewolves will greet her with fangs or friendship. While Betsy and her husband, Sinclair, try to make nice, their legal ward, Baby John, that's all one word, anyways, freaks at every werewolf he meets. Meanwhile, Betsy's posse back at the St. Paul mansion is not lolling. Increasingly frantic emails alert Betsy to her half-sister's increasingly erratic behavior. Looks like the Devil's Daughter is coming into her own and raising hell, all in the name of making Betsy's life easier, of course. Now, when I saw this and read this, I was like, well, maybe it's really goofy, silly, doesn't take itself too seriously. It could be a laugh, but I'll be entirely frank. I stopped at page 19. I really didn't make it very far in this book at all before I was completely turned off and completely uninterested. And I will say up front, this is probably a tone issue. This is probably I am not the right audience for this book, which, you know, look at the cover, read the summary. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's for chicks, but whenever I see something with a female protagonist and then it has that sort of supernatural vibe, and it's not a clearly romance novel, it's not her in a bikini along with a shirtless guy, it's like, I at least think I can maybe approach that book. I at least might be able to relate to it somewhat. And I have never read a romance novel. I will never read a romance novel. I mean, I am open to reading all sorts of books, but again, if I ever see a cover that has a shirtless man or, you know, the classic male-female posing and embrace, and it's like, no, nope, never, ever, ever, ever. You know, I get that that's not my domain. But again, it's like, this one has more of an innocuous look, but it's of that same issue. I feel bad to stereotype it, but this seems more like a Survivor. No, not even that. I'd say more like a Keeping Up with Kardashians, Real Housewives. That's how it kind of seems. Overly dramatic. And I guess I should clarify, because it doesn't even mention this in the summary, but the main character is a vampire, and she is Not just a plain old vampire. No. When she was turned, she became the vampire queen. And I feel like that's a real symptom of these styles of books where the person is plain Jane, they're average, they're normal, then they get introduced into this new world, and instead of just being a regular player, instead of just being average again, because they're transferring into a completely different world, they are alien, everything's foreign to them, so you would think that compared to everybody else who's already been a part of it, they're going to be further behind, but somehow they always get springboarded into the upper echelons of that society. So instead of her just dealing with the new world of being a vampire, being undead, the different powers and hang-ups and weaknesses and so on and so forth, nah, she becomes the queen, and I forget what stereotypical weaknesses she was immune to, but because of her status, however this worked, she was immune to, I think, like holy water, for instance, because she's the queen. Oh, that's how that works. But as far as the tone and why I didn't like it, she sounded incredibly vain, a vapid airhead. She lives in a mansion, and she is a shopaholic. She has, multiple pairs of, dozens of pairs of basically the same exact shoe. And the interaction, the characters, I was aggravated, annoyed. I didn't like anybody. And again, I was barely being introduced to anybody, and I was disgusted and so aggravated. I was done. And one of her best friends who lives in this mansion with her, he's just a normal guy, but he's a doctor. But what he was complaining about is, well, even though I'm a doctor and I get to live in this mansion with my close friends, I actually get paid less than the receptionist. And I had to think, what in the world are you talking about? How in the world could that possibly be the case? Unless you're pulling, not scummy, but super, excuse me, super lazy, barely working, barely there, a few hours a week shifts. How in the world could a doctor earn less than a receptionist? That is very unrealistic. That is, I don't know. It just seemed like, again, with the whole issue of their vanity and their shallowness, it also seemed that they were complaining about nothing. Because again, if you have all of this status, you have great wealth, you have all of these luxuries and comforts, what in the world are you complaining about? Well, as the queen of the vampires, I have to deal with the politics or all this other nonsense. And it's like, oh darn, the crown weighs so heavy, doesn't it? Oh my gosh, let's take the velvet cape and the silk off, because it's just too much of a burden for your poor weary shoulders to carry. So yeah, I will admit completely that I am just not the right audience for this. If it's already got 8+ books in the series, then it's appealing to excuse me, it's appealing to people, just not, I'm not gonna be one of them. But just leave this as a complete niche. Leave this to ladies and a certain group of ladies. I don't know, that seems dismissive or arrogant, but that's just not me. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. But it was just so egregious. I would say this is burn-it material. Now, again, there's going to be an audience for this. There is, but I don't think the world would be amiss to get rid of this kind of schlock and this sort of nonsense and vanity and I'm just done. I'm done. I barely read 20 pages and I'm talking this much because I hate it this much. But anyways, I know I've been doing a lot of negative book discussions, but that's because I'm covering books I plan to get rid of first. So that's just a simple explanation for that streak of negativity. Going to be a handful more books like that, and then I hope to be a little bit more bouncing back and forth, a little bit more even-handed instead of just continually negative. But excuse me. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. If you like this book series, even tolerate it, you read more than 20 pages, you're completely different than me, so that's just how things go. But anyways, have a good one, folks. See ya.